Yes, I am here, Prof.M.Shafiq Baloch from Emerson College. So we notice that there is also another need for completing the first half of direct indirect. So most of the students commented in the comment section that it was incomplete video, and I also viewed that yes there was not no information about the use of optative sentences and also the use of let. So I'm going to explain these two things for you, dear students. The very first thing is that we notice that in optative sentences, so there are three things: whether you pray for someone, or you curse someone, or you express your wish for something. So we come to the very first type. So that is, we find that is a prayer. That he said to his father, "May you live long." He prayed for his father that he might live long. Another thing is the next type is the curse, that he said to her, "May you go to hell." So he cursed her that she might go to hell. Now we come to the wish, that he said, "Would that I had been your teacher." So he said to her, "Would that I had been your teacher." He wished her that he had been her teacher. So notice that these are the three types in the optative sentences. As far as the very first sentence is concerned, so we go for some prayer. We are saying something to a person whom we are praying for that person. So in that sentence, we notice that the clue is here, that at the end of the sentence there is also exclamatory mark. And we notice that may can also be used in interrogative sentences. A student said to his teacher, "May I come in, madam?" So, and then there is also question mark. It means it is an interrogative sentences. But when there is an exclamatory mark at the end of the sentence which begins with may, so we use pray, not asked. It means that may is used for praying someone. So in the next sentence, we find that there is also the curse. He said to her, "May you go to hell." So it is due to that sentence, due to the construction of sentence, that we come to know that he is not praying for her, but he is cursing her that she might go to hell. In the next sentence, there is the wish for someone, that he said, "Would that I had helped her in time." So he wished that he had helped her in time. Whenever we express some wish, there is the use of were, that would that I were the education minister, or had been, would that I had been the education minister. But if there is the use of the third form, then we are using had, and there is also no use of using been. Suppose he says that, "Would that I had picked the flowers in time." So it means that he wished that he had picked the flowers in time. Now we come to the last type, that is the use of let. We notice that there are also the two types of using let in the sentences. The very first type is that here is the use of let us. For example, he said to her, "Let us go for a picnic." So he proposed to her, or he suggested her that they should go for picnic. It means that when there is the first person, then first person in the reporting speech before inverted commas, so then we use, so there is also the first person, we use we should. But if there is no first person in the reporting speech, in the reported speech, we use they should. So I clarify my point while giving you two examples. The very first example is this one, that he said to her that, "Let us go for some picnic point." So it means that he wished to her that they should go for, he supposed to her, we find that he proposed to her, or he suggested her that they should go for some picnic point. But if I change he with I said to her, "Let us go for some picnic point." It means that I proposed to her that we should go for some picnic point. It means that So there are also, we notice that there are two things. That when they're the first person in the reporting speech, we convert let us into we should. But when there is no first person, when there is no use of we are or I in the reporting speech, so then we use they should. Now we come to the other thing in the use of let. In the use of let, when there is no let us, but there is just let me, let her, let him, let the girl. I give you the example. He said to the peon, let her come in. So he ordered the peon to let her come in. We notice that it is just like the imperative sentence. In imperative sentences, we also used to and we didn't use that. So here we are also using to and we are also using let. But in the case of let us, we were not using let us, but we are changing it with we should or they should. But when we say that he said to his peon, let her come in. So he ordered his peon to let her come in. Another sentence is this one, that my mother said to me, let me bring your food here. So my mother advised me to let her bring her food. So we notice that let me, let him, let her, we can use advise, request, forbid, or suggest something. But in a sentence, when we don't know the relationship between the two person, then we can also use tell or told. Suppose he said to her, let us do our work. So he said to her, let her do her work. So he told her to let her do her work. So when we are not sure about this one, that whether it is an advice or it is a request or it is some order or it is something else, and we don't know about the relationship between the two persons, then we can also use tell. Now I also give you a brief sketch of all these types. The very first type was, when before coming to the types, we also noticed that there were also the three changes made in direct indirect. The first change was the change of pronouns: first person, second person, third person. And the second thing was the change in the tenses. The third thing was the change in the words, this into that. And there were also some types of direct indirect. The very first type was assertive sentences. The second type was interrogative sentences. The third type was imperative sentences. And the next type dealt with exclamatory sentences. Then comes optative sentences, and later on we come to know that there is also the use of let us or let. We find that let him or let her. So it is, we find that the indirect, it is also very easy to change these things. You should be very careful about the very first thing, that is the change of said. If there is some listener in the assertive sentences, said should be changed into told. And if there is no listener in the assertive sentences, said should remain the same. And the next thing, we come to the interrogative sentences. Here, the said, we find that it is also, as I have mentioned it in my previous lecture, that it is direct indirect in the game of said. So in the next, we find that in the interrogative sentences, said should be changed into inquired or asked or wanted to know. So these are the three verbs that we can change said, because there is also, at the end, there is also the question mark. Whenever there is some question mark, we are going to change said into asked. And now coming to the imperative sentences. In imperative sentences, said is turned into advised, requested, forbade, ordered, or if you don't know something about the relationship between the two persons, then you can use told there. Now we come to the next type. In exclamatory sentences, we notice that said is converted into exclaimed. There are three kinds of exclamation. Exclamation of joy. So he exclaimed with joy. If there is some listener, then I'm surprised to see that in direct indirect books. So when there is some exclamation, there is no listener. But if there is some listener, you can use it in this way, that he said to her, "Hurrah, I have won the match." he exclaimed with joy to her that he had won the match. When there is some listener, you can use to her or to him. And the next thing is that if there is some sorrow or grief, so you can change said into exclaimed with sadness or exclaimed with grief. If there is some listener, you can use to him, to her. Now in the third construction, we find that there is also surprised, expression of wonder, surprise, and said should be changed into exclaimed with wonder or exclaimed with surprise. And we find that this is also what a lovely flower it is, how entertaining the feast is. It also looks just like an interrogative sentence, but it is not an interrogative sentence. So there is also the use, look at the punctuation mark. So there is also the use of exclamatory mark. It means that there is also the expression of wonder. Now we come to the optative sentence. In optative sentences, so there are three things. The first thing is said should be changed into prayed, and if there is some listener, so prayed for her. And then said should be changed into curse. If we are cursing someone, so then said should be turned into curse. But if we are wishing something, so would that there is also the use of would that, we should change said into wished. And in letters, we find that there is also suggested to someone or proposed her. So said is changed into suggested or proposed. And later on, if the sentence begins with let me, let her, we can also use all the verbs which we have already used in the imperative sentences: ordered, requested, advised, forbade. Or if we are not sure whether something does not fall in the above mentioned groups, so then we use told. So I have told you three changes, and all the types, assertive sentences, imperative sentences, interrogative sentences, exclamatory sentences, optative sentences, and later on we have also noticed the use of letters. And I have told you that it is also direct. Indirect is the game of the change in the use of said, that where should we change said. The next important thing is the use of punctuation marks. Punctuation marks help us a lot in recognizing to which type a sentence belongs. If there is just a full stop, we find that when there is some full stop, it means that these are two types of sentences, whether it is assertive sentence, whether we are saying something to some person, or we are just saying that he said I'm going there, he said that he was going there. At the end, we notice that there is also period or the full stop. So in the next construction, in the next type, there is interrogative sentence. At the end of the interrogative sentence, there is also the use of question mark. Now we move to the imperative sentences. In the imperative sentences, there is also the use of period or full stop at the end of the sentence. Now we come to the exclamatory sentences, and we find that in the exclamatory sentences there is also the use of exclamatory mark at the end of the sentence. Now we come to the optative sentences. There is the use of again exclamatory mark when we are praying someone, or we are cursing someone, or we are wishing to some person, or we express our wish. There is also exclamatory mark at the end of these sentences where we express some wish. Now we come to the use of let. In the use of let, so there is also let us go there. There is also the use of full stop at the end of all the sentences containing let. Another important thing that should be kept in mind in direct is the use of that. Where should we use that, and where shouldn't we use that? Now we come to the very first type, assertive sentence. In assertive sentence, there is also the use of that. He said, I am going there. So he said that he was going there. We use that in assertive sentences whether there is some listener or there is no listener at all. He said to her that he was your fan. He told her that he was his fan. There is also the use of that in all the assertive sentences. Next, we come to interrogative sentences. in interrogative sentences we don't use that. So there are two things which should be kept in mind, that if the sentence begins with some helping verb, is, am, are, can, could, will, shall, should, has, have, had, then we use if instead of that. And the next thing is that in the next type there is WH word, where, what, how, we use these words instead of that. Now we come to imperative sentence. In imperative sentence there is also no use of that, and we use to. He said to her, please help me. He requested her to help him. We also use that. There is also no use. We'll notice that there is also no use of that in imperative sentences and in interrogative sentences. Now we come to exclamatory sentences. In exclamatory sentence, there is also the use of that, whether we are expressing some happiness or some grief or some surprise. Suppose he said to me, "Hurrah! I have got my goal." So he exclaimed with joy to me that he had got his goal. And we come to the next type, optative sentence. In optative sentences, there is also the use of that. He said to her, may you have an issue. So he prayed for her that she might have an issue. Issue in the sense of child, newborn child or child. And so whether we are praying or cursing or wishing something, we also use that instead of inverted commas. Now we come to let us. In let us, there is on one side there is the use of let, and on the other side there is also no use of let, but there is the use of to. In the first example, we notice that there is also the use of that. Let us, when the sentence begins with let us, we can change it that they should or that we should. But if there is no use of let us, but let him, let me, let her, then we use to instead of that. So to is used in imperative sentences. To is used in let me, let him, let her sentences, and we also notice that there is no use of that in interrogative sentence. So again, punctuation marks. We should be very careful about these punctuation marks. Punctuation marks give us a clue whether that is an interrogative sentence or it is a simple sentence or it is an exclamatory sentence. Next thing is that it is also the game of said. You should be very, very careful that said, where you are going to use said. So said should be changed into suggested, exclaimed with joy, exclaimed with sorrow, asked, wanted to know, inquired, said, told. And so there is again the last thing is that the use of that. Be careful that whether we are going to use that or not. In modern sentences, we also notice that in modern grammar there is also no use of that. He said to me, I am your fan. He told me that he was my fan, or he told me he was my fan. But all these things should be kept in mind while changing direct into indirect. Another important thing which was left behind was that if in the reporting clause there is the use of past tense, then we change said into in assertive. Suppose in assertive sentences we change we said into told if there is a listener, but we don't change said into told when there is no listener. But if there is present tense or present we find that future indefinite tense or present indefinite tense in the reporting speech. So what happens there? It means that we are not going to change the tense there. Suppose he says to me that he said to me, or he says to me that I am your fan. He tells me that he is my fan. When there is present indefinite tense or present or future indefinite tense in the reporting speech, we don't use past tenses. Present tense or future tense can also be used there. So you can also have a lot of practice while having various sentences. In these sentences may be converted into direct, into indirect. Another thing is that if you get expertise or if you get mastery over direct indirect, then try to turn indirect sentence into direct sentence. Suppose I say that I asked her where she was going. Now I am going to use inverted commas and all the things which are necessary in direct sentence. So I said to her, comma, inverted commas, where is she going? And question mark. Later on, there is also the use of inverted commas. So be careful. So in indirect narration, you don't use inverted commas, but in direct narration you use inverted commas there, and also question mark, exclamatory marks, so all these things. So one thing is that chaining direct into indirect. The other thing is that chaining indirect into direct. The third thing is, which is also very important, which is also very common in CSL papers or in other papers, that there is a dialogue. Two persons are speaking. Suppose I say that Najma and Aslam, so they are speaking. So Aslam, then there is the use of colons. Aslam, it means that Aslam said to Najma, Aslam, what is wrong with you? So then Najma, my grandpa is in the hospital. Aslam, what has happened to him? So if there is grandpa, so then him. What has happened to him? So Najma told Aslam that her grandpa. Najma said to Aslam, my grandpa has so he has some cardiac problem, cardiac arrest. It means that he has some heart trouble. So then so Najma told Aslam that her grandpa had cardiac arrest, or he had heart trouble. So in this way, there is some dialogue, and you are going to change that dialogue into indirect speech. Whether you can use a paragraph there. So that paragraph, in that paragraph, one thing should be kept in mind, that only the name of the speaker should be written there. In the very beginning, the speaker and the listener both should be mentioned. But when some speaker is there, you can just write his name Aslam, and there is no need to write the name of the girl over and again. You can use her. So in this way, we notice that that was also the second lecture, and here about direct indirect. And in that lecture, we have discussed many things. Thanks a lot. Inshallah, we will meet in the next video. Thanks.